2 months ago I boarded our garage loft. I've now taken a massive step towards completing this project by installing a staircase, and so in today's video I'm going to show you how I went about ordering and installing this beauty. Now, the main reason for creating this space was to make a sort of hangout exercise type area for the family. So it would have been really tempting just to whack up a couple of planks with some treads in for a DIY staircase. But I've got half an eye to the future when we might want to convert this whole space into a house for one of our family members who's got special needs. So I wanted to install a staircase that would work in that new house with all the building regs, tick boxes complied with in the process. And so I decided to buy a professional staircase to install in the corner of this garage. Now, two things occurred to me. Firstly, I couldn't support the staircase off the wall because the garage doors, for now at least, have a big runner that would get in the way. And we need to leave a gap for any potential internal wall insulation. So I decided to buy a professional staircase online, and I chanced upon Stairbox in one of my first Googles. I should emphasise I haven't been paid anything by Stairbox for the feature in today's video, although I did get a discount on the first part of the order for mentioning them. The online process kind of lured me into the whole thing, if I'm honest. From clicking on design and buy, it was simply a case of adding the floor height from finished surface in the loft to the concrete on the ground floor below, and also the ceiling height below. I then added a right turn, as this was the best way I could think of to configure the staircase so as not to take up too much space in the room. I didn't see a point adding a feature step at the bottom. Balustrades all round, as the staircase would be self-supported with the additional Newell posts. Not ordering additional landing balustrades and Newell posts was a bit of an error, but I didn't know at that point how I'd configure the space. And I have those on order now. I might do a quick update, maybe on my community tab in a couple of weeks' time, to show you how I got on finishing off the landing. What else to say about the staircase? It was standard construction. The string material was standard, furniture grade 32mm pine treads with veneered pine risers and pine Newell posts, balustrades and handrails. And you can lower or increase the price by opting for MDF or oak. I ordered a fixing kit, some of which I didn't need, but it was handy to have the right riser tread wood screws. But it came with 2 tubes of this, which is fantastic stuff. Never used it before. More on that in a minute. And I ended up with this very cool 3D model to visualise exactly what I'd be getting. Now, having not constructed a staircase before, I thought I'd enlist the help of my carpenter mate John to help me install it. As you've just seen, I left a corner of the loft mostly unboarded, thinking this is where I would put the staircase. So the morning John arrived, the first job was to cut away 2 ceiling joists. We doubled up the trimmer joists, being the joists either side of the ones cut out, and fix in their place a doubled up trimmer, which I screwed and glued to the cut joists and also strengthened with hangers. I haven't doubled up this trimmer as it won't be carrying any weight. I'm pretty sure the rafter and stub of the cut joist are themselves nailed to the wall plate, but I've turned the strap round and screwed it to both. Unnecessary, but one of those peace of mind things. And John cut away a bit of flooring which will need to be further trimmed when the final loft balustrades and Newells are installed. An incredible 2.5 weeks later and the staircase arrived with the 2 main sections already constructed in the factory. 2 additional strings and all treads and risers for the winder flight positioned in the middle of the staircase, and in boxes the 8 Newell posts and all the string cappings, handrails and balustrades, and finally a box of screws, wedges, Newell caps, winder wedges and angle blocks. John set up a temporary workshop outside on the drive to work out what was what, although each part is labelled and you can download plans of what you've ordered together with various installation guides on the website. Now, when installing a staircase, it's usual to start from the top and work down. If you've got a string to fix to the wall, refer to the installation guide, which gives full instructions on how to do this, including using additional noggins or structural screws if necessary. There's also information on how to construct your staircase from scratch if, because of tight access issues, you ask for the entire thing to be delivered in kit form. We started by experimenting with a dry install with the staircase laid on its side, slotting each string into the top Newell post. This also showed us we could install the risers after gluing in the strings, as there is enough play in the slot to do so. Stairbox use a mortise and tenon joint for this, secured in place with dowels. So we applied glue to the mortise and pushed the 2 together, then hit a slight snag in that the dowel hole in the tenon hadn't been drilled all the way through. So we located the string fully in the Newell post to mark and then re-drilled the hole. A little bit of glue in the hole.
Just down there.
Oh, look at that. And a little tip from John, chamfer the end of the dowel as the hole in the tenon is slightly offset to pull it into the mortise. So this helps you to locate it. And you tap the dowel in until you feel resistance, at which point you know it's hit the bottom of the hole. Best not to drive it too hard in case the dowel holes have been drilled almost through to the other side, as you risk driving that dowel all the way through the newel post. The dowels could then be trimmed flat. Some would recommend using a chisel for this, but for me, it's my Japanese saw every time. We then repeated the process on the other side. With the Newels attached to both strings, we could trim down the top tread and glue this into place. John also likes to drive in a recessed screw so that the tread is firmly held in position while the glue goes off. We could then glue and screw in place the top riser. Being careful to wipe away any glue with a wet cloth that squeezed through to the front. To notch or not to notch? Now I suspect I'm going to get some criticism for this next section of the video, because it's established wisdom to notch the back face of this newel post to receive the trimmer. Now we decided not to do this and instead screwed a piece of timber to the trimmer for the top tread to sit on. Lifted the staircase onto this bit of wood, propped it in position with a bit of wood that we'd cut to size, and then screwed this extra trimmer piece into the top tread. And what I've also done is I've put 2 structural screws through the double trimmer into the newel post itself. Now, given this staircase is supported all the way down to the floor with this newel post, and that we've got double trimmers up here, there's very little weight bearing down on this part of the staircase. So I think what we've done is absolutely fine. But I think probably if you're planning your own staircase, it's probably best to notch into the back of the newel post. I can see why it's recommended, it's just so much stronger. So we stuck this prop to the back of the staircase, which is now level, which means we can leave the staircase in place while we connect everything to it. With the top flight in position, we could glue the string tenons on the bottom of the flight into the next 2 full height newel posts, with a bit of fine tuning to the height of the newel post to cater for some irregularities in the floor. At this point it's important not to tap the dowels in too far because they coincide with the groove for the risers. The instructions suggest it's easiest to assemble the winder turns with the staircase laid on its side and what would be the wall string, but to be honest, with the full height newel post glued in position, the staircase was now rock solid and it was easy to glue and pin the winder strings in place so that we could then dry assemble the winder turn by sliding the winder fully into the wall stringer and newel post housing to check how that and the corresponding treads went together before gluing them. To be honest, this was probably the trickiest part of the job, as there was a fair bit of play both sides of the winder and its housing. We piloted and then screwed the winder tread into the newel post housing on both sides of the tread to secure it in position. This left us with just a final flight to glue, slot into position and peg with the dowels. And with the last 2 newel posts glued and pegged, the final, if rather fiddly job of day 1 of the build, and John's last on this job, was to glue and screw in place the riser below the bottom tread. The staircase wasn't safe to walk up yet, as I still hadn't driven in the wedges below the winders, or for that matter, finished installing the treads and angle blocks. First up, it was the winder wedges, and I had a small problem here. The wedges supplied were all 170mm long, and I felt like the winder tread needed longer wedges to support this section, so I made some wedges of my own out of pine. And what I'm going to do is cut this wedge off and oversize it slightly. And it was time for that polyurethane glue I showed you earlier. In hindsight, better glue placement would have left less glue squeezing out of the edges when I inserted the wedge. So that's in. What I love about this glue is it extrudes in a reasonably firm paste, a bit like EHB 60 you might have seen in my other vids. Doesn't drip like PVA, and unlike products like Sudal's 45P, which is more like an expanding foam when set, this stuff is rock solid. Next up was the winder flight risers. For this it was back to the PVA and using the wood screws provided to attach the risers through the pre-drilled holes on the back of the riser. And finally it was on with the angle blocks, which I secured in place whilst a generously applied PU glue set using my pin nail gun. I was nearly done with 2 coats of Tretex now applied, but the tread's not quite sealed against those muddy feet, more on that at the end. I bought some of this floor protector. It's almost impossible to apply to the staircase, but I just about got it on sufficiently and I'm really pleased I did. At this point I had some fiddly infilling to do with the loft boarding at the top of the staircase. Which, once cut, I glued down using the Egger floorboard adhesive and Spax floorboarding screws you would have seen in my loft boarding video. There is some other minor tidying up work to do on the flooring which I'll tackle when I install the landing Newell posts and balustrades. Then it was time to pilot hole the string capping or base rails, which are pre-cut in the factory with each angle to suit the pitch of the flight. You're meant to screw down every 50mm from each end and then every 450mm along the rail. At this point I could attach the handrails, which are themselves grooved underneath to take the top of each balustrade. To do this I positioned a balustrade, all of which are pre-cut to the correct angle, at the top and bottom of each flight, flush to the Newell post. And with the base rail height now set, I could screw the handrails to the Newell post, using the screws supplied and into the holes already drilled on the Newell posts. I centred the handrails on each Newell post using my combination square. The balustrades need to be equally spaced such that no part would allow a 100mm diameter sphere to pass through. I went for a horizontal spacing of 82mm, and with each flight being a slightly different length, made up the difference by adjusting the spacing between the last balustrade and Newell on each run. I decided to dry fit all of the balustrades to the correct spacing, and with this done I could start gluing them in and the infill pieces that go between each balustrade. For the infill pieces I set the angle on the miter saw to suit the pitch of each flight and screwed a spare angle block to the miter saw bed so that I could cut all infill pieces to an identical length. To glue them in, I started with PVA but found this a bit messy and it wouldn't have worked with the infill pieces that would go into the underside of the handrail. So I quickly reverted to my old glue gun, perfect for all the infill pieces with its 180-second set time. I don't know whether this is right, I don't know whether this is accepted practice, but I found a really good quick way of getting these balustrades in and well spaced. Hot melt glue gun, bit of glue on the top, bit of glue on the bottom, steaming away nicely. In we go. Quick check, make sure the spacing's right. Double check on the spirit level. More glue on the glue gun. In we go. And this is where this glue gun comes into its own, because for this one up here, we literally whack it in. God, this is quite tight up here. And a little bit of manipulation, and that's in. Don't even need to hold it while it glues. Then we can get our final balustrade in. Bosh, bosh. This gap here between the Newell post and the final balustrade is a bit narrower, so I've cut this infill to size, measured it with my little metal ruler, So last one to go in. Done. A couple of final jobs. I glued the Newell caps on with my glue gun, again with that quick setting time. This was particularly useful for fixing the Newell caps to the underneath of the Newell posts without the need for mechanical fixing. And the last but not least, I glued and gently tapped the pine plugs into the handrail screw holes. They tap in flush, so no need to take off any raised sections with a plain chisel or saw. I just used a bit of 180 grit sandpaper wrapped around a block of wood. And the last thing to talk about today is what I've done to seal the treads of this staircase. I told you earlier on about putting this protective roll on. I've always been a massive fan of products that sink into the wood rather than varnishes that sit on top of it. And so on this job, I'm using this Hardwax Oil from Treatex that you might have seen on my previous videos where I've stained and sealed engineered oak with this stuff. I've gone here with the clear matte oil. I probably should have gone with the natural because the clear matte still brings out that sort of orangey colour in the pine, which the natural wouldn't have done. But I did get slightly unstuck because I put one coat of this on, the wood was very hungry, sucked it in, and then I started going up and down the staircase, got it quite muddy, and I had to give it a real scrub to sort it out. And what I should have done, at the moment it's got two coats on, so first coat went on, second coat on top, having cleaned it. It's now pretty mud proof, and what I'm going to do next is denib it, just give it a very light sand, put one final coat of this on, and with that final coat on, this staircase will be really resilient to foot traffic and will only need a quick wipe if it gets any mud on it. I suppose the other thing about something like this is it's going to be really easy to put onto these handrails, balustrades, in a way that paint would be a lot more fiddly. So what do I think of this product? We had that one tiny glitch with the dowel hole that hadn't been completely drilled through, but other than that, it's been a pretty faultless experience. Slight gash on one of the handrails. I don't know whether that was me or whether that happened in transit. I'd probably be a little bit more exercised about that if that was in my house, and I'm sure Starbucks, if I asked them, would supply a replacement handrail should I have wanted that, but I'm quite happy with it, and I'll just probably put a bit of filler on it. So that's really it for today. Details of everything I've used today will be in the description below the video. Don't forget you can access that by clicking on one of these links, depending on whether you're watching this on a smartphone or on a PC. And the last thing I should say is if you're new to the channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, and don't forget to click on the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. See you soon.